أهلا بكم مشاهدينا إلى هذا الحوار الخاص مع السفير الإسرائيلي الأسبق لدى الولايات المتحدة السيد مايكل أورين. أهلا وسهلا بك معنا. بداية، زيارة رئيس الحكومة الإسرائيلية بنيامين نتانياهو إلى الولايات المتحدة الأسبوع المقبل، ما هي توقعاتك من هذه الزيارة وما هي الملفات المطروحة؟
Well, first of all, pleasure to be with you. It's going to be one of the most important meetings that the Prime Minister has had with the President. This will be his sixth meeting. In many ways, this is the most fateful. And one of the reasons for that is just the sheer number of issues that the two leaders have to discuss. It begins with Gaza, and Gaza itself is immensely complex, and we can go into detail on that. It is Syria, Lebanon, and it is Iran.
بالفعل، دعنا نتحدث عن قطاع غزة. هنالك رغبة لدى الإدارة الأمريكية بالانتقال إلى المرحلة التالية في خطة الرئيس الأمريكي دونالد ترامب، وربما توسيع دائرة السلام. هل برأيك المناخ السياسي الحالي في إسرائيل يتيح هذا المجال؟
First, you have to say what the second stage looks like and which second stage we're talking about. Now, according to the president's 20 points, the first point is the ceasefire, the return of hostages, and the Israeli withdrawal to a line which is basically 53% of the Gaza Strip. The second stage is supposed to be the disarmament of Hamas, you take away the guns from Hamas, the formation of an international stabilization force, ISF. That international stabilization force is supposed to go into Gaza, actually the entire Gaza Strip, and the Israeli forces are supposed to withdraw then to the international line. Now, the problem is that Hamas won't give up its guts. And the United States will try to pressure Turkey and Qatar to in turn practice to protest or put pressure on Hamas. I don't know if that's going to work. I don't know if anybody thinks that's going to work. So the issue then is what happens with the ISF. So within the administration, within the White House, there are people who think, well, the international force could go into the 53% that is currently occupied by the IDF, and the IDF can then withdraw. But Israel's going to oppose that. They're going to oppose that for the simple reason is if the international force goes into Gaza and to that 53%, then Hamas will use that force as a shield and shoot over its head, and Israel will have to reply in a way that will bring it into direct conflict with those countries that have contributed forces to the ISF. So that is a very sticky point, which the Prime Minister and the President have to work out. Another issue relating to Gaza is the nature of ceasefires. Now, the two countries have different definitions of what constitutes a ceasefire. Now, for example, an Israeli soldier is wounded or an Israeli soldier is killed. That's front page news here. But in the United States, nobody hears about it. And the Americans will say, okay, it's a small thing, but let's not have a big reaction to it. Israelis don't view it that way. Two soldiers get wounded, and the IDF eliminates the second in command of Hamas, and the Americans get angry. Why are you upsetting the ceasefire? Because the president is signed on that ceasefire. That ceasefire says that there's peace in the Middle East. Well, along Israel comes along and it proves that there's not peace in the Middle East. So that is also an issue which the two of them have to work out for Gaza. And every other plan that the United States has, including building model villages, model cities in that 53%, will have to work out. Who's going to be responsible for the security in those cities? Who is to ensure that Hamas simply doesn't come back to one of those cities, as it probably will?
فعلا أنت ذكرت العديد من النقاط التي قد تكون خلافية، لكن دعني أركز على مسألتين: تركيا وقطر. كيف يمكن جسر الهوة بين الموقف الأمريكي من ناحية وبين الموقف الإسرائيلي من ناحية ثانية؟
It's very difficult because the United States and Israel succeeded in defeating the Shiite axis in the Middle East, but Israel does not want to replace the Shiite axis with the Sunni axis. Sunni axis being the Muslim Brotherhood, right, Ikhwan Muslimin, who are championed by Turkey and Qatar. So you put Turkey and Qatar into the Gaza Strip, they are the major backers of Hamas, and what have you done? You've actually created a victory for Hamas. And as you note, this administration, the president, has very close relations, both with the Qatari leadership and with President Erdogan of Turkey. So how do you bridge them? Extremely difficult. Extremely difficult, not impossible, but Israel's going to have to be very, very strong and say, no Turks, No Qataris' involvement in Gaza, certainly not in the ISF.
تحدثنا بالفعل على هذه النقاط كافة، لكن لم نطرق مسألة الملف الإيراني. هنالك حديث متكرر عن أن نتانياهو قد يحاول إقناع الرئيس ترامب بتوجيه ضربة للمشروع الصاروخي البالستي الإيراني. ما هي بتقديرك أو بتقييمك جدية هذا الملف الذي سيكون مطروح، أم أنه سيكون بالفعل مطروح أم لا في الولايات المتحدة؟
Israeli press has reported, apparently from leaks within the Israeli government, that Iran is rebuilding its ballistic missile capability, and in fact has managed to replace all those missiles and launchers that were destroyed during last summer's 12-day war with Iran, and that the Iranians are actually building more ballistic missiles, and the missiles that have learned a way of penetrating Israel's defense systems, and there's also the fear that Iran will soon start rebuilding its nuclear facilities, particularly the Fordow facility that was destroyed during that war. So Netanyahu is going to go to Washington, and he's going to try to achieve a number of understandings with the president. One, get them on the same page. The Iranians are doing this. The Iranians don't feel that they lost that war. The Iranian leadership is under tremendous pressure domestically. There's no water. There's no electricity. The economy is terrible. They may want a little war with Israel to try to get out of their political difficulties. So the understanding that Netanyahu has to have with the president is, A, if Iran again poses a threat to the state of Israel, will the United States, A, support Israel if Israel launches a preemptive strike, or B, will the United States actually join that strike itself? These are extremely difficult challenges for the prime minister, because there's also a political reality, not just in Israel, but in the United States. And people don't understand this sufficiently here. There is something of a civil war going on in the White House within the MAGA movement of the president, and between people who claim that the president has not lived up to his pledge to put America first and is dealing with Ukraine and dealing with Russia and dealing with Israel and dealing with the Palestinians. Why isn't he focusing on the economy in the United States? And the issue of Israel is absolutely central here. Everyone's arguing about who is pro-Israel, who's anti-Israel. And if the president's going to come out and make a lot of gestures for Israel right now, it's going to have a political price for him.
إذن بالعودة يعني بعد هذه المواضيع الإقليمية التي نتحدث بها، دعنا نعود إلى الشأن الإسرائيلي الداخلي. هل تتوقع أن يواصل الرئيس الأمريكي دونالد ترامب التدخل في محاكمة بنيامين نتانياهو؟
It's shocking to Israelis to hear that the President of the United States might intervene in the legal proceedings against the Prime Minister. But in America, it's not so shocking. I've been hearing for a long time from my sources in Washington that the President could take sanctions against the legal proceedings in Israel. How would that happen? Well, there are judges, there are prosecutors who have family in the United States, who have bank accounts in the United States, who want to travel to the United States, who need visas. All types of pressure could be put on those individuals through those means. And for those who might doubt that the president would do that, look what he did with Brazil. So Brazil, a former president, was being prosecuted for crimes, for corruption, Bolsonaro. And President Trump likes this gentleman and decided to put a 50% tariff, 50% into law, on imports from Brazil, until the Brazilian government left his friend alone.
هل تتوقع مثل هذا الأمر أن يتم مع إسرائيل؟
No, I don't think he's going to put tariffs on Israel, but he could take personal measures against prosecutors, against judges.
طيب، نحن نتحدث في عام انتخابي في إسرائيل، العام المقبل هو عام الانتخابات في إسرائيل. إلى أي مدى ستؤثر هذه الزيارة على الانتخابات الداخلية في إسرائيل؟
Everything is political, of course. And Netanyahu is already thinking about the elections coming up in October. October is not a long time away. That election will really start this summer, late spring, this early summer, and he's already thinking. Listen, he's also thinking the same thing about the investigation of October 7th. He wants a political investigation, not a state investigation. He wants the findings of that investigation to come out probably in September, a couple of weeks before the elections, and we pretty much know what those findings would be. He is a master politician, Mr. Netanyahu. It is always premature to eulogize him politically. And he has a very solid base, We're speaking here in Yaffo. And for many people I run into in this part of town of Tel Aviv, you don't say a word against Mr. Netanyahu. You go several kilometers to the north and you won't hear a word in favor of Mr. Netanyahu. But he has a very solid base. It could be as much as 30% of the electorate, and that's not going to change, which means that Netanyahu will always be a player, if not the captain of the team. He could well be prime minister again.
طيب سؤال أخير بصفتك دبلوماسي مخضرم، يعني هنالك من يقول إن العلاقات بين نتانياهو وترامب متوترة، وآخرون يقولون إن العلاقات وطيدة. كيف تقيم العلاقة بين الرجلين؟
The relationship between the two of them. The relationship between them is complex. I think there is a genuine friendship there in the degree in which two of these individuals actually have a genuine friendship. They are of the same generation. They feel that they're up against the same opposition, which is what they call the deep state. The deep state, the bureaucracy, the press, the media, the elite, the educated secular elite, not the working class. And so they have a lot in common, the two men. And they also come from the world of business. They understand business. They understand how markets work. And
لكن هل هنالك تنافر بين الاثنين؟
No, I don't. Not much. There could be over Gaza. Could be over Gaza. We didn't mention Lebanon and Syria. That's also an issue because several weeks ago, Ahmed Shara was in the White House. They got a very warm welcome. Trump has now removed the last of the American sanctions against Ahmed Shara. They're both facing ISIS, and Shara wants Israel to withdraw from the buffer zone that Israel occupied after the fall of Assad. And Netanyahu is going to say, no, we'll keep our forces there until such a time as Shara signs an agreement with us, a defense agreement. It doesn't have to be a peace agreement, but a security agreement. And that's another issue which the Prime Minister and the President have to take up, and it could be a source of friction.
السفير مايكل أورين، شكرا جزيلا لك على هذه المقابلة الخاصة مع منصات قناة الحرة. شكرا لك.